Ladies and gentlemen, we have roughly around 4 to 5 games left into the season. And with the season coming to a close, there are certain NBA players that have proven us wrong. Certain players that have made us eat our words. And friend of the show, Swish Out, you know what I'm saying, has made a video called "We Owe These NBA Players an Apology This Season." I don't know how many players he's going to cover, so I'll add some of the players if he misses any that I believe he missed in this video as well. But let's get it popping, man. Links to this video will be in the description. Come on.
Did you do anything different this summer working out to try to reach that goal?
I mean, it's my goal every year, to play 82. And I didn't do anything differently. I mean, took some time off, got back in the lab, and ready to get started.
When watching the NBA, or really any of our favorite sports, something that's inevitable whether we admit it or not, is you actually being proven wrong. And honestly, to me, unless you're like an egotistical nut or you have some type of money on the line, that should never be a problem. Not even just with sports, literally with life in general. Whenever a narrative is created, it's typically loud when it's negative, but it's always the opposite if proven wrong. Anthony Davis, he's a walking example of this very same thing, in my opinion. For the last 3 years, he's been tagged as street clothes, the guy that can never stay healthy, and to be honest, it was true. He's not owed an apology for the criticism he received back then because it was valid. In the 2 seasons post his championship run, he literally played in half the games, and they were well under 500 in said games. We know AD is way too significant on both sides to be missing gaps of the season like that, so he was rightfully called out on it. But this season, and really going back to the deadline of last year, everything is changed. He's quietly been healthy since February.
Yo, shout out AD, because I would have put him on this list as well. There have been a couple of players in the league that have had their healthiest seasons in a while. Like players that we perceive as injury-prone players, motherfuckers that are always injured, that have played like a lot of games this year. And Anthony Dimmadome Davis is definitely at that top of that list. He didn't play yesterday, I believe, so definitely not playing all 82. But he's about to play 74 to 77 games. And we're talking about Anthony Davis, like Swish Out just said. Last season played 56. The season before that, 40. Season before that, 36 in a 72-game season. Season before that, still missed 10 games in a 70-game season. Season before that, 56, right? So this is a guy that just hasn't really been healthy. The only healthy season he's really had, or the healthiest season he's had since 2019, he won a championship and was arguably a top 3 player in the league. So for Anthony Davis to have the healthiest season of his career, it looks like he's on pace if he just plays 2 more games. That's big time. Not only that, but just one of the best seasons of his career, in my opinion. Didn't really get talked about much this year. I feel like the focus from the big man position has been with Jokic and with the big men specifically. It has been Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. And Wemby has been the talk of the show this season. But Anthony Davis is one of those generational prospects that has panned out for the most part, right? He is playing on the Los Angeles Lakers and is averaging 25, 13, and 2.4 blocks. One of the 5 best defenders in the league. Anchoring, I believe, a top 5, top 10 defense. Okay, never mind. They are actually ass defensively. But we all know how good Anthony Davis is on the defensive end. And not only that, but LeBron even, right? LeBron, for a guy who's been known as an Iron Man his whole career, prior to this season, I was seeing the kinks in the armor. I don't want to say the wrong fucking word, bro, but y'all know what I mean. Prior up until I would say 2018, you could count on LeBron for 70 games every single year, but then that turned into 55. Went back up to 67 in the shortened season, but then went down to 45, and then went down to 56, and then went down to 55. This season, another resurgent year of 69 games, the most he's played since 2018. So shout out to Bron as well. Kawhi, I believe, is another player, and Paul George. Kawhi and Paul George. Kawhi has played 68 games. Let's look at his resume lately. He played 52, missed all of 22, 52 here, 57, 60. He hasn't been healthy at all. He's having his healthiest season since 2017. And then Paul George has played 73 games. And Paul George also hasn't been the healthiest since 2019. There have been a lot of players, actually, that have not been fully healthy since 2019. And I think James Harden is also in that conversation. Am I tripping? Yeah, James Harden hasn't really been healthy since 2020. Like, nah, bro, what is in the air? What is in the air? This is kind of crazy, not that I'm looking at it. Who else? Who else is it? Oh, Zion. Zion's another dude. You know what I'm saying? I was honestly on the road to giving up on him, but he's having his healthiest. Yo, listen, I don't know if all of this is being caused by the 65 game rule specifically, because correlation does not equal causation type shit. And even from the swish out clip that Swish Out just played from Anthony Davis, it seemed like Anthony Davis didn't do anything different, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, he always tries to play 82. It just doesn't work out that way. It just happened to be that the first season that they implement the 65 game rule, now he has his healthiest season. So who actually knows? But yeah, man, I think we're gonna look back at this NBA season as one of the better ones in NBA history, in my opinion. But nevertheless,
February 8th of last year, which was basically around the deadline, approximately 100 games, AD averages 35 minutes a night. Out of every player that plays that many minutes a game, these are the most games played in that span. AD is literally fourth. Also, to add a little bit more context to it, out of everybody on that list, specifically those above him, he's the only one that played an additional 2 rounds last playoffs. Again, I agree with Chris Broussard. He doesn't deserve an apology for doing what he's paid millions to do. But if we're going to slam him for such a crucial flaw, we have to at least acknowledge the improvement. To me,
yeah, just give him props.
Fair. Look at the last few number 1 picks that actually won Rookie of the Year. Ben Simmons won it a few years back, and we literally thought he was a mixture of 2 of the top 5 players to ever play this game. Cat was constantly voted year after year after year as the player that GMs would like to build their organizations around.
I forgot about that.
Won the youngest MVP award ever, and he was basically tagged as the new savior for Chicago. Blake Griffin was basically on every commercial you could find. My point is,
bro, me and Damo were talking about it the other day, bro. Young Blake Griffin was nasty, dog. I think y'all forgot how hyped and how just good young Blake Griffin was, bro. How box office he was. I understand Chris Paul was the dude that took the Clippers to that next level, but the guy who really made Clipper basketball must-watch basketball was Blake, bro. Like, out the gate, 23, 12, and 4. Like, out the gate, 23, 12, and 4. Then that goes to 21, 11, and 3. And then that goes to 18, 8, and 4. And then that goes back up to 24, 10, and 4. This was when he was starting MVP voting. Y'all forget about the season. And then 2015 was 2015. And then that's when Blake but he definitely slowed down. But, man, young Blake. And then he had that resurgent season in Detroit. But young Blake was a problem, bro. Young Blake was a problem.
Most number 1 picks, especially ones that actually win Rookie of the Year, they get some type of hype / recognition behind their name. Paolo Banchero might actually be the most disrespected number 1 pick I've ever seen in my entire life. I remember this graphic from earlier this year with Wemby when they showed number 1 picks in their national televised games, and I didn't even realize that Paolo last year didn't even have one. This man's one and only national TV game so far in his career was a month ago against what really felt like the number 1 pick in his exact same draft. But his actual play on the court has been good, way beyond his years. And he's not even in the greatest situation if you really look at it. One of Orlando's biggest flaws, a flaw you really can't afford to have nowadays in today's NBA, is the fact that they really can't shoot. Paolo mainly works in the post, mid-range, intermediate area anyway, so he's surrounded by bad spacing. to me, that's a big reason why he's a bit inefficient, well below the 2-point percentage average, despite him having a lot of attempts. But even with that, he's still averaging 22, and his efficiency has improved significantly from last year. Bro,
he's not even a born player.
21 years old. He's damn near leading that team, that extremely young team, in points, rebounds, and assists. It is extremely hard to be a primary decision maker for any team or at any position or at any age, but it's very hard at 21 years old as a front court player. If you look at the top 25 players as far as usage rate, there's only a few players that leads their team as front court players. The ones that actually do and they have their team in playoff positioning are some of the best players in the sport, now including Paolo. Yeah, he could become a little bit more consistent with his efficiencies, and to me, that comes with the development of the spacing. But I mean, no notoriety as a #1 pick, legitimately living up to that standard, 12-game improvement your rookie year, on pace for a 14 more game improvement in your second year, and nothing. That don't even make sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is weird. For some reason, Cade and Paolo specifically in back-to-back drafts have been the least hyped #1 prospects I've seen in a minute, bro. And I would like to figure out exactly why that is. I think it has something to do with NBA marketing, though, to be honest with you. I think, and maybe a part of it, too, is as fans, we were, for so many, because Swish Out talked about it, for so many years, the #1 overall pick was hyped up to be this generational last prospect that was supposed to change the course of NBA history, but it just did not pan out from that #1 overall spot, right? Hold on. #1 overall picks NBA. Let's just look at the #1 overall picks. I would say even starting from shit, we might even have to go back to Greg Oden. There are a lot of players on this list that were supposed to be change the course of NBA history type of dominance, right? Greg Oden. Derrick Rose panned out up until his the season after, or maybe the season after that, his MVP season. His career didn't pan out, long story short. Same thing with Blake Griffin. John Wall peaked after 2018, after 2017, really. Kyrie's still going, and I think he has changed the course of NBA history, but he also hasn't been this, like, top 5 perennial MVP caliber player. Anthony Davis, I think, has come close to that. He has definitely changed who wins and who doesn't. So I'll give AD that. But even then, I think the fact that AD has never really been in the best in the world conversations outside of 2020 is kind of in this conversation that we're having right now. Anthony Bennett was a bust. Andrew Wiggins, for the sake of this conversation, was a bust. Karl Anthony Towns, like Swish Out just said, first 3 years, he was looking like he was next up for real. And then he ended up being, at best, a second-best player on a championship level team, though, or a championship contender. Ben Simmons did not pan out. Markelle did not pan out. DeAndre Ayton did not pan out. Zion, to be determined, but he's been disappointing so far. Anthony Edwards, I think, is panning out for the best. But I think once we got to Cade and Paolo, there was a sense of, all right, bro, the last time motherfuckers really believed this generational hype was Zion. And Zion did do his shit in his first 2 seasons, but even in his rookie season, he barely played. His second season, he was cool, and ever since then, he has been injured up until this season, right? So once we got to the Cade and Paolo, I felt like the hype for the #1 pick has just been kind of, all right, bro. When is that next dude really coming up? Because even if we look at the 90s, not all of these dudes panned out, right? But we're looking at Shaq, we're looking at AI, we're looking at Tim Duncan. 3 dudes that ended up being top 15 players of all time. Chris Webber, he still peaked at a top 10 player of all time at the very least, right? And then we go to the 2000s. We got Dwight, we got LeBron, and that may be it. But if you just look at NBA history, the #1 overall pick was more so of a surefire thing if you just look at it like really quickly. Maybe I'm wrong on that assessment if I really, you know what I'm saying, slow down. But yeah, I'm looking at these 80s players, bro. Like a lot of these number 1 overall picks is panned out. Hakeem, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, James Worthy, you know what I'm saying? I feel like I just missed one. Ralph Sampson, Mark Aguirre to a certain extent. But then you get into the 2000s, and there's just way more misses than hits. And the misses really missed. Like, really missed. But nevertheless.
Kyrie Irving this summer, he was a huge risk
Kyrie.
for any team not named the Dallas Mavericks.
Kyrie.
And to me, he kind of was for them too. Last summer, we know, he really didn't have any market as far as a long-term deal because he simply wasn't trustable. Obviously, his skills demand that he be compensated, but the fact that he hadn't played in over 65 games in 6 years and he hasn't really been professional, it just wasn't happening. The Mavs did end up locking him in essentially for a 2-year deal with that last year being a player option. And to be honest, it's paying off. I'm not saying they're a championship contender because they still don't quite feel like that. But they damn sure are a threat to anybody that you would name a championship contender. Mainly because they have 2 of the scariest shot creators in the league now, not just Luka. And Kyrie's been the ultimate professional. I know Jalen Brunson was very good and solid with Dallas, but he wasn't really unlocked like he is now with New York. Still should have gotten that contract. And Kyrie is having by far the best season from a Luka teammate since he's been in Dallas, and it's not even close.
Man, shout out to Kyrie, man. Shout out to Kyrie. Shout out Kyrie, man. I personally feel like he is owed different types of apologies outside of just this season alone. But I am so glad that Kyrie, for the first time since he left Cleveland the first time, or the only time, has just had a basketball season. You know what I'm saying? Like, he stayed under the limelight. He is just focused on basketball. He hasn't been in any drama. And it has worked out for the best. You know, there's no pressure of being a number 1. There's no pressure of, I don't know, being a locker room cancer or not. Kyrie Irving went to a team where he was the clear number 2. Clear number 2, because there's a number 1 on that team, undisputably. And has just been balling out. Just been focusing on basketball. And y'all even wanted to try to push that he was watching the beginning of the season, but as the season progressed, Kyrie proved why Kyrie is Kyrie. 25 points per game on perennial 50-40-90 shooting with some of the most versatile scoring actions we have seen in NBA history. That is one Kyrie Irving. And y'all got to stop playing with that man, bro. Y'all have to stop playing with Kyrie. Y'all also doubted the fit with him and Luka, both from even like a chemistry standpoint. I never got that because Luka and Brunson worked. So just the concept of 2 ball dominant guards working together has already worked to the point of a Western Conference Finals appearance. Like, not even on some, they made it to the playoffs. It has worked to 1 round away from making it to the NBA Finals. Beating a 64-win team. Or not, was it 64? But nevertheless. It has worked before. I never got those comparisons.
Since Dallas went to this lineup, now with Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington, they've been dominating on both sides. That team, to me, is going to be dangerous with Kyrie healthy and locked in around this time of year. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Rudy Gobert because I've talked about this repeatedly this year. Rudy Gobert was looked at as possibly the worst trade in NBA history. Obviously, that was very premature. Minnesota had a lot of injuries last year, and we didn't see them enough whole to even judge. But this year, they've still had key injuries, but for the majority of the year, they've been the first seed. Most of that stems from the foundation they've created defensively, starting with Rudy Gobert, likely the defensive player of the year. Now with Rudy, and obviously it's not just Rudy because they have Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley, etc., but he is the foundation. They give up the fewest points in the NBA, some of the fewest points in the paint. Teams shoot the lowest 2-point percentage because of his presence. They have the best defensive efficiency, and simply they're the best defense in the sport, and that all started with the man that we once laughed at because of that trade. Also, that team used to get bullied on the glass, and that never happens anymore, mainly because of Rudy Gobert.
I also think in hindsight, the shit that Rudy Gobert got for that one Clipper series where he got cooked like crazy, I think was some of the most gas shit I've seen in NBA discourse in a while. It made sense to cook him at the time, but in hindsight, it was on some, what the fuck do you want Rudy Gobert to do when the point of attack defenders aren't, like Rudy Gobert can only cover so much space. Like the levels of defensive dominance you would have to cover all the space that you wanted Rudy Gobert to cover during that series would have been crazy. And that actually would have made him the greatest defender of all time if he was actually able to do it. But nah, man. I was definitely doubtful of the trade after last season's results. I did not think Minnesota was going to be this dominant to the T of a number one seed in the Western Conference, 55, 56, 57 win team. I did not see that coming. So just for that alone, I personally feel like the trade is already worked out for Minnesota. Because Minnesota, while obviously now the goals are set on a championship, this is not a team, this is not a franchise, this is not a fan base that wants a championship. I think this is a franchise similar to, in my opinion, the Atlanta Hawks, similar to the New York Knicks, where they have been a laughingstock of the NBA for so long. Can we just have good winning basketball for a couple years? Same thing with the Sacramento Kings. Can we just have competitive playoff basketball, perennial playoff level basketball for a couple years? That's all I'm asking for right now. You know what I'm saying? And then we can work ourselves up to that point. But Rudy Gobert has definitely been the biggest part of that. I think Rudy Gobert has been the accelerator in that. Because Cat's been on the team for a minute now. Ant just came onto the scene. But adding Rudy Gobert added this win now focus to the team that, in my opinion, just has been taken for granted. I know Rudy Gobert is one of the mean players in the league, so motherfuckers just keep on clowning him. It is what it is, but I still really like Rudy Gobert defensively and what he brings to the table.
Zion Williamson is kind of like AD, where he doesn't necessarily deserve an apology, just a little bit of acknowledgement. In the beginning of the season, specifically the play-in, when everybody was watching him, bro just looked awful, like he was visibly out of shape. But one, he has trimmed down significantly since that time. And two, now with the ball more in his hands, especially within the last month, the offense collectively has been feasting, and they don't really get talked about enough. In the last month, Zion's usage rate has been at its highest it's been all year, and the Pelicans have been winning more, and the offense has been top 5 in this span, and most importantly, their best player is possibly healthy for a playoff run, something that's never happened. This may sound silly, but again, he deserves a little bit of acknowledgement for this. If Zion plays tonight, which he's supposed to, that will be 20 consecutive games that he's played. Sounds small, but the highest he's ever played was 25. So again,
he gonna get an apology from me, because again, I was ready to give up on the Zion train, man. I was so high on Zion, and I was so disappointed with how his career panned out, or was looking like it was gonna pan out the first 4 years of his career. Because again, I need y'all to understand, the Vic hype y'all are seeing right now, I think it has topped Zion going into his draft at this point. But by the end of his rookie season, I think that the Victor hype is much more than the Zion hype. But going into their NBA season, you just had to be there. Going into the draft, you just had to be there. Zion was just as hyped as Vic, if not more. And I was on that fucking train, bro. I was on that train. I thought he was one of those prospects that you did not have to wait for. He was going to be good out the gate. Maybe not 30 points per game out the gate, but 21, 22, which is exactly what the fuck he did up until he got injured. And then came back his second season, averaged 27 on like 60% shooting from the field, bro. Like, sophomore Zion was crazy. And then third year Zion happened. And then fourth year Zion happened. We're now in the fifth year, and this generational player that I was looking for still hasn't been there. But it looks like it does look like he's on the right trajectory, because I was looking at his last 15 or so games, and this is the Zion I'm looking for. right here. This is the Zion I've been looking for. You know, I think the problem with injuries and what Zion has been going through is he's been working so hard to get to 2021 levels that we're not even talking about how Zion can improve his game, which even that he actually still has if you watch him play. Like, his playmaking has been underrated as fuck. But yeah, over the last 15, 26, 7, and 5 on 58% shooting from the field. 26, 7, and the Pelicans have been winning a lot of fucking games, bro. So, yeah, man, I think let me see what he does in the playoffs / play-in. But I may be fully back on the Zion train for real, man.
Again, that's improvement. And lastly, Jalen Green is not a bust. He just needs the ball. Obviously, he's been in the news for stuff off the court, but on it, whether that's contributing to it or not, he's been an absolute monster within this last month. I love Şengün. I've talked about him. I love the baby Jokic comparison. I love a big that's multifaceted enough to kind of run an offense. Like, that's very special, and that's the evolution of the game. But without him, look at how impressive Jalen Green has been. 2 different 40-point games, 2 different 37 points, excluding those 40-point games. And they've been winning. In this 8-game stretch, Jalen Green has by far the best plus-minus in the NBA. Me, like everybody else, I just watched episode 2 of LeBron and JJ Redick's podcast, and I saw LeBron talking about bag talk and when people get favorable switches, how they kind of abuse it and think it's one-on-one. But Jalen Green is like the prime example of if he gets a favorable switch or a big in front of him or a good matchup, I like his chances every time because his bag is crazy and it's hard to stay in front of him. To me, shot selection and the tempo of the game, meaning when to get everybody else involved, that's always been his development curve. That's why I love Fred VanVleet as a vet guard still being there. But he's never been a bust, not to me even close. It may just be a situation where fit may be his biggest hindrance, and if him and Şengün can work simultaneously, that will be their biggest question going forward.
I think I've grown to be way more patient now compared to how I was 4 or 5 years ago when it comes to young prospects. But I think even this season has showed me that I need to be even more patient, y'all. Because developing in the league is tough. You know, like we have these discussions about the league being the most talented it's ever been. And yeah, it is the most talented it's ever been. At the same time, you're throwing in 19, 20-year-olds into the fire. You are throwing in 19, 20-year-olds into the fire with expectations to be franchise cornerstones for X teams. And we're doing it every single fucking year. That's tough on any 19, 20-year-old. I don't give a fuck. If you're an NBA player, you've been trained to do this your whole life. So when I look at a Jalen Green, you know, I think it's one of those things where you ask someone, you know, out of this draft class, who are you not high on? And, you know, you look, boom, 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 boom. I know it's only been 3 years. You say Jalen Green, right? But, you know, I think at the end of the day, you may not be as high on him as other people are. But I still think within that, I think a lot of NBA fans need to still give grace because now we have a situation where the bust conversations were really getting serious with Jalen Green ultimately after his second year in the league as a 20-year-old. The bust conversations were getting a little bit too crazy for a guy who was 20 years old, averaging 22, 4, and 4. And now here we are, his third year in the league. I understand the first half of the season did not aid in those conversations, and that's why those conversations continued. But here we are ending the 2024 season, and we're seeing, oh shit, this guy has potentially elite scoring ability, elite shot creating ability, while still being 22 years old. Imagine what he could be at 25, 26. And maybe that's not MVP caliber. It doesn't have to be. But that is a really good player that I don't think deserves bust conversations. Like another dude I was a little bit too soon and too skeptical on, and I'll throw him on this list for me personally, is Scotty Barnes. After his sophomore season where he had a little bit of a slump, I slowed down a little bit on the hype. I was like, Let me say this again. I still felt like he was going to be a productive NBA player, but this idea that this is a franchise cornerstone, number one, all of that, I was kind of like, this might be who Scotty Barnes is, type shit. But for him to elevate in his third season to be 28-6, be an all-star in his second season, I think that's big time for a guy like Scotty Barnes. So, I think it's that conversation. Not necessarily bust, but of can this player become a star, and people giving up on that conversation specifically. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to a guy like Scotty Barnes. Who else do I owe an apology to? Ooh, this is a team one. Shout out to Peyton Pritchard. I was really I was not a Peyton Pritchard fan in the beginning of the season, bro. Because for those who do not remember, like in this first 23 game stretch or however much, he does not pass. He cannot defend. Or he's a scrappy defender, but he has height limitations. But he was putting up 6 points on 38% shooting. The only thing I really asked for is to hit a three, and he was shooting 32% from three and 77. Over the course of the NBA season, I think he is on a little bit of a slump right now. As we close off the season. Yeah, I'm looking at this right now. This is pretty bad. Yeah, he's back to 30% over these last 9. But over the course of the NBA season, he has gone up to 38% for even on 5 attempts a game. For a part of it, for a part of it, he was shooting 40%. So shout out to Peyton Pritchard on that front. And Denver. I think Denver to me was always going to be a championship contender by the end of the season, but I thought at least in the regular season they were going to coast a little bit more than what they did. I thought by the end of the regular season we were going to look at a 52-53 win team that people are like, this is not the same Denver team, and then once the playoffs came, they just turned it up and oh shit, this is still Denver. But for them to end the season with 55 plus wins, Denver is that team. Who else do I owe an apology to? I think that's it. Do I owe an apology to anyone else? KD. I'm gonna throw an apology to Kevin Durant, man. I think Kevin Durant is actually having the most underrated season of his career. I think Kevin Durant still is in that top 5 NBA player conversation, but people don't want to bring him up for X, Y, and Z. I think the slander has been too much to come back from. I don't know, but KD this season has been backpacking the Phoenix Suns. In my opinion, this has been a team that has not been healthy for big portions of the year. He has been tasked to be a defensive anchor for this team alongside Yusuf Nurkic. And this team is 12th defensively in the league, and I think Kevin Durant has been a big part of that. He has stepped up defensively. And scoring-wise, 27 points on 52, 42, 85 splits. Kevin Durant is Kevin fucking Durant. And his playmaking has improved. He's averaging 5 assists a game. Well, actually, yeah, it hasn't improved, but his playmaking has been there still. Excuse me. And I believe he's actually improved in terms of shooting at the rim. Let me double check. Because I swear to God he actually has. Let me double check. So at the rim, he's shooting 83%. That's right around 2021 levels. So yeah, just another crazy efficient season from Kevin Durant like he usually has. But yeah, man, I think Kevin Durant, shout out to KD. I'm on the let's show KD love train, as I feel like he's about to retire soon as well, along with LeBron and Steph Curry. And I think for a generation, those 3 guys have defined a whole generation. And he's also played 72 games. Another guy who I did not mention before, who was injury prone since 2019, missed all of 2020, 2021, 2022, was not fully healthy. 2023 only played 47 games, is having the healthiest season of his career since 2019. Shout out to Kevin Durant. You know what I'm saying? But with that being said, also shout out to Swish Out for the video. Links to his video will be in the description down below. And I am out, man. Peace.